With this Mercedes-AMG GT 4-door 63 4MATIC Plus model, the three-pointed star maker's Affalterbach sub-brand has produced its first unique 4-door design, and it's quite an achievement. Here you're going to see the industry's most detailed film on this hugely impressive flagship AMG contender.
Once merely a tuning specialist, AMG, the sporting division of Mercedes-Benz, is now increasingly turning its hand to its own unique cars. And here's the third one we've seen so far, the GT 4-door Coupe. The AMG brand is scattered liberally around the Mercedes range these days, variously designating either a sporty trim level or, if you've gone further, a bespoke engined hot version of whichever the Stuttgart maker's products you've settled on. But AMG has only ever developed three cars that are uniquely its own, and all have been very special indeed. The Gullwing Door SLS of 2008 was the first of these. The Mercedes-AMG GT 2-door coupe of 2014 was the second. This third design, though, represented the Affalterbach maker's biggest challenge yet. It's one thing to make a sports car handle engagingly. It's quite another to achieve the same thing with a 5-metre-long, 2.1-tonne luxury 4-door model, particularly when it must channel up to 639 horsepower to the tarmac. Welcome to the Mercedes-AMG GT 63 4MATIC Plus 4-door coupe. That's quite a name, isn't it? And you can't help thinking that this design's in-house development code tag, X290, might have been a snappier and more appropriate moniker. Quite apart from being a mouthful, this contender's designated name is also misleading. First, because this car is actually a hatchback. And second, in the way that it suggests what we're looking at in this case is merely a lengthier version of the AMG GT 2-door coupe. It isn't. The lightweight space frame construction that enhances the handling of that 2-door sports car doesn't feature here, nor does this 4-door model bother with established AMG sports car styling cues like wide rear haunches and a cab rearward silhouette. Instead, it's very much its own design, a 4-seater luxury performance GT which comes complete with all the engineering firepower that AMG can muster. 4-wheel drive, adaptive air suspension, 4-wheel steering plus an E differential, and that's just the start. As a result, this twin-turbo V8 version's ready to trample over the sales turf of anything from a Porsche Panamera to a Bentley Continental GT. Our initial impression when we first learned of this car may have been fairly similar to yours, if this model happens to take your interest, namely that it's merely a V8 AMG version of the Mercedes CLS 4-door coupe with a few extra Affalterbach visual tweaks to justify a big hike in price. In this film, you'll get the detail on how it's actually a lot more than that and why it's one of the finest luxury performance cars we've ever tested. In its fastest form, it's the most powerful car Mercedes sells and the second most powerful ever after the old SL65 AMG Black Series. But that's only one of the important things you need to know about this GT 4-door. The others await your perusal in the 5 other sections of this film. We've now tried AMG's legendary twin-turbo V8 in all kinds of Mercedes models, saloons, cabrios, sports cars and SUVs, but never with as much power as this. So, what's it like? Well, press the large starter button on the AMG drive unit console and it bellows into life with a thundery rumble. The very first Mercedes was a racer, and the company says that motorsport is a part of its brand DNA. It feels like it. The AMG engine up front is hand-built by specialist engineering artisans at the company's Affalterbach factory, but until the arrival of this GT four-door, the highest state of tune you could have it in was the 585 horsepower form that's fitted to the Nürburgring-fettled GTR Super Sports Car, which is basically the model that acts as a safety car at F1 Grand Prix races. When you learn that this output is merely the starting point in the GT four-door 63 range, most will go for this uprated GTS model with 639 horsepower. You'll get some perspective when we tell you that this car is very fast indeed, the most powerful mainstream production model in the company's history. In this S variant, the 62 mph benchmark is savagely dispatched in just 3.2 seconds en route to a top speed that tantalisingly gets within 4 miles an hour of 200 miles an hour. For the standard four-door GT, the figures are little different, despite a change of turbo boost from 1.5 to 1.3 bar. They're rated at 3.4 seconds and 193 miles an hour. The huge amount of torque that all this boost produces, 800 Nm in the standard model and 900 Nm in this S version, has meant the need to replace the 7-speed dual clutch speed shift DCT AMG auto gearbox used on the GT sports car with the 9-speed wet clutch speed shift MCT AMG auto box in place here. But you still get perfectly sighted steering wheel paddle shifters, a race start launch control feature, and software that blips the throttle on downshifts, to the evocative accompaniment of popping and banging from the switchable AMG Performance exhaust system. So it goes very quickly in a straight line. But then Mercedes-AMG models always have. Until now though, we'd never tried a large one that could really tame the turns. When we first tested the current generation E63, we reckoned that car got close to a sports car-like cornering feel, but at heart it was still a big bruiser, and sometimes felt like it. On paper, this GT four-door is too. In fact, its 2.1-ton curb weight is actually 63 kilos heavier than an E63. Unlike that car though, you don't really feel that weight, either when you brake or when you hurl the car into a bend, thanks to the way that the chassis and drivetrain systems interact in a more sophisticated manner. There are plenty of these, including torque vectoring and handling features developed specifically to improve the cornering stability and traction of this car, including an actively locking rear axle differential and rear wheel steering that turns the back wheels slightly in the same direction as the fronts at higher speeds. Thanks to all of this, once you commit to a set of corners, it's easy to forget that there's an extra set of seats behind you. So reassuring is the turn-in, and so much bite is there through the electromechanical steering. This rack doesn't communicate in quite as direct a way as the electric steering setup in a rival Porsche Panamera turbo would, but enough feedback is provided here to allow you to feel fully in control when you're testing out this car's prodigious limits of traction and grip at speed through tighter bends. Through these turns, body roll is negligible and understeer virtually non-existent, unless you've really barreled into the corner far too quickly. In some ways, it's actually a better experience than that you'd get in the rear drive GT two-door, because even in the dry, you can power out of a corner far sooner and with more security, thanks to the 4MATIC Plus four-wheel drive system. Drive to the rear wheels is permanent, with those at the front called into action on the occasions which will be frequent if you're pushing on, when all that torque twist is too much for the rears to handle on their own. As with the E63, S variants of this GT four-door get an extra drift mode for track use that disconnects the clutch from the front wheels to allow for lurid power sliding circuit drifts. It's fun, but rather silly, and we're not going to try it here because we get locked up. That, of course, is the continual issue with a street racer this powerful. It's intoxicating, but on the road, even if you are brave enough to probe the wildest edges of the performance on offer, you can only do so for a few seconds if you're not to attract unwelcome attention from the local constabulary. Drift mode only works in the most extreme setting that this model's incorporated AMG Dynamic Select drive program system can offer. A race mode that's also exclusive to the S variant as part of an AMG Dynamic Plus package that additionally includes dynamic engine mounts which enhance performance by reducing powertrain vibrations. The other selectable Dynamic Select options, Comfort, Slippery, Sport and Sport Plus, are common to both GT four-door models and, as you would expect, influence throttle response, gear shift timings, steering, exhaust note and stability settings. As usual with this sort of setup, there's also an individual section of the centre dash screen which allows you to establish your own bespoke drive setup, in the kind of way a DTM champion would tune his race car, which is useful to have. You might be like us, for instance, in favouring sharp throttle response and those exhaust fireworks, but wanting those attributes to be mated to slightly less heavy steering and a supple ride. Well, a suppler ride anyway. This GT four-door is never less than firmly damped, however much you fiddle with the individual section menus. That rival Panamera model offers a suppler ride. These rather cheap-feeling little controllers added into the lower part of the steering wheel allow you to easily switch between drive modes on the move and assign a pre-programmed individual setting. Up for even more modes? Well, that individual section includes access to the car's integrated AMG Dynamics handling programs, which have a lot to do with the sublime chassis and drivetrain interaction we mentioned earlier. There are 4: Basic, Advanced, Pro and Master. Normally, these are automatically pre-assigned to the 5 AMG Dynamic Select driving modes we just mentioned. Basic offers extra stability in the Comfort and Slippery settings. Advanced is activated in the Sport program and adds in lower yaw damping, a lower steering angle requirement, and enhanced agility support to give the car quicker reactions on twisting country roads. Pro, short for Professional, belongs to the Sport Plus program and gives the driver even more assistance for dynamic manoeuvres, while agility and steering feedback are further enhanced. And finally, Master is a track-only option that works exclusively with the race mode we referenced earlier and adds in even sharper steering and a slight oversteer element to the vehicle balance, which makes it easier to get the back out and engage in the tyre-smoking drift mode behaviour we were just talking about. The Master mode in the race setting can only be activated once you've used the separate button on the centre console to switch the ESP stability system either to its interim Sport handling mode or, if you're feeling very brave, off completely. If you're going to buy this car, it would be a criminal waste not to at least try it on a circuit, and in the case of this S model, see what these drift, race and Master modes can do. As part of the purchase price, you actually get a session with an instructor on the test track at Mercedes-Benz World at Brooklands in Surrey, though more professional instruction might be needed if you're to fully use what is possibly our favourite feature on this model, the AMG Track Race package. This is a lap timer and telemetry system that can not only record your circuit times, but also analyse data and help you to improve them. It can quickly learn any new track you try and already knows a range of famous ones like the Nürburgring Nordschleife, Laguna Seca and Spa-Francorchamps, prompting you with braking and cornering tips that can also be replicated onto the head-up display so you can improve your technique as you tick off the laps. An incorporated drag race function allows you to analyse acceleration and braking values while overseeing data on tyre pressures, transmission temperatures and steering angles. Even for fast road driving, there's a lot to get to grips with if you're to make the most of the drive package this car has to offer. Adding to the whole race-ready feel are the bespoke graphics that AMG's added into the futuristic twin cockpit screens that dominate the cabin. The Virtual Instrument Cluster's AMG Performance section briefs you on real-time engine output and torque, plus the screen will also allow you to select a Super Sport single-dial layout. This delivers a Gran Turismo-style flickering bar graphs showing you how much throttle and torque you're using, plus there's a side force indicator to show you how hard you're cornering. Graphics like these are fun, but the only time they show anything of any real interest are the times when your eyes should be firmly glued to the road. Easier to use without attention distraction are the individual lower center console buttons that allow you to choose manual paddle shift operation for the gears, change the stability settings and tweak the feel of the suspension, which features AMG ride control, adaptive dampers and a multi-link air sprung setup at the rear. There's also a manual button for the electrically extended rear aerofoil, which normally works automatically, rising as high as 182mm in height to increase downforce at speed. An optional fixed rear wing can replace this appendage to press the car even more firmly down onto the tarmac. This apparently able to add an extra 30 kilos of downforce by the time you reach 187 miles an hour. There's yet another button that will mute the sound of that AMG Performance exhaust, but you almost never will. So glorious is the lavishly intoxicating soundtrack, which makes even a trip to town an event worth savouring. Which is just as well as in other respects, city journeys with this car can be slightly challenging. Manoeuvring at low speeds can be awkward because the car tends to lunge forward even with tiny throttle inputs. That can make parking a pain, a time when you feel the bodywork's enormous width, but all-round sensors and a standard 360-degree surround view camera help enormously. Thanks to this and better all-round visibility, it's certainly a great deal easier to manoeuvre into spaces than its two-door GT stablemate. Predictably, this is also a better highway cruiser than that alternative sports car Model 2, though you'll get a more cosseting ride and significantly better refinement on long trips from this car's two closest rivals, that's Panamera Turbo and BMW's M8 Gran Coupe. Tyre roar's a particular problem. So this Mercedes isn't the perfect Grand Tourer, but for us, that difficult balance between track tearaway and highway GT has been better achieved here than in any other car of this kind we've yet tried. AMG Supremo Tobias Moers reckons that in this form, the Affalterbach 4-litre V8 is pretty much at the limit of its performance potential, which makes it all the more impressive that this car allows you to transmit so much of that torque usably to the tarmac. It's remarkable, but perhaps that's what we should expect from a brand that dominates the top tier of motorsport to such a great extent in the modern era. To understand why, you only need to drive this car. One look at this car is enough to convince you of the seriousness of its intent. Stylist Vitalis Enz is keen to convince us of what he calls its athletic beauty. But then Mercedes described another of its four-door coupes, the current third-generation CLS, in that way too. We'll only comment that this AMG GT four-door much better fits that description. Most observers seem to think that the bruising street racer style shape is better resolved than that of its closest rival, the Porsche Panamera, and we tend to agree. Given that this is the most powerful mainstream Mercedes model ever made, if you're an enthusiast, you won't be able to help lifting the heavily contoured power dome bonnet to inspect the 4-litre bi-turbo V8 that lies beneath. An engine basically the same as the one used by other top Affalterbach models, but carefully refettled for this car. As usual with the brand, the power plant bears witness to this tuning division's unique one-man, one-engine approach, embellished as it is with a plaque featuring the signature of the engineer who worked upon it. My compliments, Herr Rodriguez. The front end certainly offers the required level of overtaking presence, courtesy of a broad, wide shark nose that sees carbon fibre trimmed multi-beam LED headlights flank a full Pan America-style vertically slatted AMG grille. Further down, as on an AMG GT two-door sports car, this central jet wing element curves between two huge corner intakes. Chrome finishing for this lower splitter identifies the uprated S status of this particular variant. And in profile, well, it's certainly a lot more of a four-door coupe than is the CLS, aided to some extent by the fact that despite its name, this car is actually a hatchback rather than a saloon. The roofline sweeps back more aggressively than that sister model, and the glasshouse is longer and wider. The wheels are bigger too, 20 inches fitted as standard with 21-inch rims available on request. Multi-spoke alloys, yellow brake calipers will also inform AMG experts of this V8 S model's more powerful status. Designer Vitalis Enz says his favourite part of this car is its rear section. To be exact, his exact words were that it has a fantastic ash. We think it's an acquired taste, but the broad, flat lines do grow on you. Super slim LED tail lamps with dynamic turn indicators define the load sill line, just above which is the automatically extending spoiler, which can rise as high as 182 millimetres in height to increase downforce at speed. An optional fixed rear wing can replace this appendage to press the car even more firmly down onto the tarmac, though only at the kind of velocity that would see you locked up for an extended period if you were to attempt them on a public road. Corner side vents add to the pavement theatre, and twin chromed tailpipes are built into the potent ribbed lower diffuser. Under the skin, the space frame construction of the AMG GT two-door sports car is replaced by MRA platform underpinnings shared with the CLS and the E-Class, though substantially revised for this design. An awful lot of effort's gone into keeping weight down. The bonnet and the front wings are made of aluminium, and there's plenty of carbon fibre in the structure too. But much of this hard work's been cancelled out by the amount of chassis stiffening that Affalterbach decided this model would need. To that end, an aluminium plate was inserted beneath the engine, and there's substantial steel and aluminium bracing along the underside, which helps to explain why this car still manages to tip the scales at over 2.1 tonnes. OK, time to take a seat at the wheel. Will the cabin of this very individual AMG design be as unique as the exterior? Well, no, it isn't really, and it's certainly not much like an AMG GT two-door, though potential buyers of this car would probably think that to be rather a good thing, rather than a low-slung seating position that sees you peering out of a letterbox windscreen as a bonnet stretching into the distance. It really feels more like a sportily trimmed CLS or an E-Class in here. The key differences lie with this AMG Performance flat-bottomed three-spoke wheel, which even Affalterbach accepts will, for some, be an acquired taste, and perhaps more significantly, what's rather grandly called the AMG drive unit, this bespoke lower console. You get the same sort of thing in the two-door AMG GT, with key control buttons laid out in a V formation in a nod to the V8 engine up front, but here the effect is somehow rather less arresting. Square rather than round controls feature with buttons for transmission, suspension, ESP stability, exhaust and start-stop that change in colour as you activate them, and lead up to rocker switches for drive program selection and volume regulation. At least you get a proper gear stick, a long ago abandoned artefact on ordinary Mercedes models, even quite a few AMG fettled ones. As in that two-door GT, this embossed selector is tiny and must also function as a palm rest for the touchpad positioned just in front. We never particularly like infotainment touchpads. On anything but a super smooth road, they're more difficult to operate than a rotary lower controller, which is the kind of thing you'd get instead on the CLS-AMG 53 model that would give you much of this car's capability for nearly half as much. Anyway, we found ourselves preferring to use either the little touch sensors on the steering wheel or the Linguatronic voice control to operate major infotainment functions. Presumably, the touchpads needed for the latest version of the widescreen cockpit display that this GT four-door model must have. Yes, it's the same thing you'd find in your grandpa's E-Class, with two high-resolution 12.3-inch displays shunted together beneath a bonded glass cover. But this setup, like just about everything else borrowed from the usual Sindelfingen production line, has been fiddled with by the AMG designers. Let's start with the virtual instrument display, which can be configured with a bespoke AMG Supersport single dial layout, focusing on a large rev counter incorporating a digital speedo. You'll probably want to flank this with the selectable AMG Performance readout, which can also be selected with the two more ordinary twin dial instrument layouts, blue tinged Classic and yellow themed Sport. The AMG Performance menu gives you engine data, things like boost, horsepower, torque and temperatures, plus a G-forces meter and your chosen AMG Dynamic Select drive mode settings. At first glance, the Centre Dash Command Online infotainment monitor looks to be a more standard fitment with the usual navigation, radio, media, telephone, in-car office, Mercedes Me Connect and vehicle sections you'd usually find on this interface. But dig into the menus and you'll find that it too has a few unique touches. In the vehicle part of the display, you'll find the individual section that will allow you to individually tailor your preferred AMG Dynamic Select drive mode settings, just as a DTM champion would tune his race car. And you'll also find what's possibly our favourite feature on this model, the AMG Track Pace package. This is a lap timer and telemetry system that can not only record your circuit times but also analyse data and help you to improve them. It can quickly learn any new track you try and already knows a range of famous ones like the Nürburgring Nordschleife, Laguna Seca and Spa-Francorchamps, prompting you with braking and cornering tips that can also be replicated onto the head-up display, so you can improve your technique as you tick off the laps. An incorporated drag race function allows you to analyse acceleration and braking values while overseeing data on tyre pressures, transmission temperatures and steering angles. Enough with controls and configurable connectivity. What else do you need to know about this cabin? Will it absolutely meet the expectations of someone prepared to pay Bentley money for a truly grand transcontinental high-performance GT model of this kind? Well, it depends on how high your expectations are. Some of the controls here are a grade in quality below those you'd get in a Continental GT or even in a Panamera. Take the smart row of small silver vents that dominate the mid-section of the dash. Their multicoloured backlighting is lovely, but grasp one and you get the brittle feel of painted plastic. Even worse are the cheap little controllers added into the lower part of the steering wheel, which allow you to switch between drive modes and assign your choice of dynamic settings. You might also object to fascia stitching that doesn't quite line up where the doors meet the dashboard, and possibly to the fact that the upper part of the cabin console is trimmed in fake Artico leather, though you can swap that out for proper Napa hide at exorbitant extra cost. To be fair, an extra spend on carbon fibre interior trim, or if you've more mature tastes, open pore grey ash wood inlays, can do quite a lot to deliver a more elegant interior here. Once you've configured that to your satisfaction, this cabin of this car can feel very high-end indeed, with the atmosphere further embellished by a standard energising comfort package from the S-Class, which coordinates the climate control, fragrance dispenser, music and interior lighting with seat heating, cooling and massage into 5 expertly configured programmes. The optional AMG Performance seats lift the ambience a few notches too, though you'll only want to live with them if you're happy with an uber-firm, race-ready feel. We'd prefer these standard multi-adjustable chairs, which position you perfectly and combine with the high-set driving position for excellent forward visibility. As with all coupe-like Gran Turismo-style designs, over-the-shoulder vision is much more compromised, so you'll be glad of the rear view camera and all-round parking sensors. As for cabin practicality, well, there's obviously a lot more of it than you'd find in one of AMG's sports cars. A deep lidded compartment at the base of the centre stack incorporates twin cup holders, USB and 12-volt ports, and a wireless charging mat. 2 more USBs can be found in this twin-lidded box between the seats, together with an SD card slot. Plus, there's an overhead compartment for your sunglasses, a stowage net in the front passenger footwell, ticket clips under the sun visors, and decently sized door pockets. The glove box is a reasonably shaped too, and incorporates a pen clip, though if you specify the fragrance dispenser, which can circulate a bespoke AMG confection, it smells rather like aftershave. Much of this compartment space will be taken up with this perfume reservoir. Time to take a look in the rear, access through these wide frameless doors. Now this GT 4-door model might be 58mm longer than a Mercedes CLS, but it has exactly the same wheelbase and, as we said earlier, a rather more overtly swept-back rear roofline. In short, it seems unlikely that passengers here at the rear will be granted the kind of back seat space they could usually expect from a luxury segment model well over 5 metres in length. Once you're in place back here, it's not actually too bad in terms of space to spread out. Legroom aided by the particularly slim front seats with their scalloped knee-level cutouts. There are caveats, of course. Headroom's better than we expected, but if you're particularly tall, you'll find the top of your head rather close to the roofline, particularly if you've paid extra for the panoramic glass roof. A few words on seating format are appropriate here because 3 quite different layouts are available. As standard, you get 2 separate chairs separated by a storage receptacle and a couple of cup holders, but that's not ideal, possibly because it might leave you a bit stuck when it's your weekend to have the grandchildren, and probably because you might object to the fact that the provided sports chairs don't fold so that when necessary you can extend the boot. So we'd recommend you pay Mercedes the small amount extra required to get this 3-person rear bench. The extra central position it offers isn't very comfortable and requires the occupant to sit with legs splayed around the prominent transmission tunnel that's necessary to accommodate the 4MATIC hardware. But when, as will be more usual, there are only 2 passengers in situ, there's the convenience of having this central armrest with its lidded storage tray and neat pull-out cup holders. The third available seating option lies with the fiendishly expensive rear luxury lounge package, which gives the back of this car the kind of ambience you'd get in an executive jet. Here, 2 separate and foldable seats are separated by a broad, exquisitely trimmed centre console, which houses an infotainment screen, switches for a separate climate zone, temperature-controlled cup holders, and a wireless charging mat. What else? Well, the sleek glasshouse might make some feel a touch claustrophobic. There's no option with the standard 2 or 3 seat layouts for a third climate zone, and we'd expected B-pillar vents. You just get these twin central ones. Otherwise though, it's hard to fault the quality and attention to detail here. The classily trimmed double-stitched door cards with their intricate Burmester speaker vents are a highlight, incorporating neat red warning lights for safer nighttime roadway exits, and large flock-lined stowage bins with bottle holders. A small pull-out central compartment includes 12-volt and USB ports, and there are seat back pockets, B-pillar coat hooks, and standard heated upholstery. Let's move round to the tailgate. Yes, despite this car's four-door moniker, there is the kind of rear hatch that you don't get on a CLS. Presumably, it's there to make this car more directly comparable to its two most obvious Gran Turismo segment rivals, the Porsche Panamera Turbo and the BMW M8 Gran Coupe. As you'd expect, it rises electrically and, of course, will do so with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper if need be. A large, if rather shallow, cargo area is then revealed, 456 litres in size. To give you some perspective, that's 16 litres more than you'd get in an M8 Gran Coupe and up to 56 litres more than you'd get in a Panamera. It's even bigger than the area you'd get in a Panamera Sport Turismo Estate, with enough space for 7 carry-on suitcases. You might do your back in a bit getting them in though, because the hatch doesn't open down to bumper level. AMG's insistence of chassis strengthening has meant the need for this overly high loading lip. It's so high, in fact, that there's room for a storage net on the inside of it. Mess about with small items in this or lose little oddments in the near section of the cargo area and you'll find yourself leaning in and mucking up your clothes if the car happens to be dirty. A bit more space is provided beneath the boot floor, though only because a spare wheel isn't provided. This is where the provided load net and rather cheap looking but surprisingly useful fold out load crate are stowed. In the main boot area you get 4 tie down points, 2 bag hooks and a 12-volt point, plus a very high quality parcel shelf. As mentioned earlier, you won't be able to extend the cargo area with the standard 2-chair rear seat configuration, but assuming you've taken our advice and gone for this rear bench, you'll get a useful 40-20-40 split that allows longer items like skis to be slid in between a couple of rear-seated folk. If you need more space, cargo sidewall buttons fold the backrests of this bench seat to reveal 1,324 litres of storage room. As you'll have seen if you've watched other sections of this film, 2 versions of this Mercedes-AMG GT 63 4MATIC Plus 4-door model are available. There's the 585 horsepower standard model, which from launch was priced from just under £122,000. But ideally, you'd prefer the faster S variant we're trying here, which offers 639 horsepower and from launch was priced at just under £136,000. That's an awful lot of money, but there's no doubt that in return, you're getting an awful lot of car. Let's position this contender for you within the Mercedes-AMG lineup. The engineering format here could be said to be closest to that of a Mercedes-AMG E63 S 4MATIC Plus Saloon or Estate, which uses a 612 horsepower version of the same V8 engine and in saloon form costs around £95,000. But it lacks the 4-wheel steering and other elements of this car's dynamic configurability. And in any case, of course, it's not a coupe. An arguably closer Affalterbach engineered contender to the kind of car this is the Mercedes-AMG CLS 53 4MATIC, which gives you a very similar 4-door coupe body style and is powered by a 3-litre 6-cylinder EQ boost twin-turbo engine developing 435 horsepower for around £75,000. Or you could have the same 53 series engine with the Mercedes E-Class Coupe 2-door body style for around £65,000. Either way, you'd get yourself a car that would take only a fraction more than a second longer than this GT63 4MATIC Plus S 4-door to get you from rest to 62 miles an hour, which might make you pause to think, given that an AMG 53 CLS or E-Class Coupe costs basically half as much. Still, if this is what you really want, console yourself that it seems to offer better value than the Mercedes-AMG GT 63 2-door sports car model. That contender can be had with the 585 horsepower engine that the base version of this 4-door model uses, but only in race-ready GTR Pro form, which costs nearly £190,000. It certainly can't be had with the fastest 639 horsepower version of AMG's 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine that we're trying in this 4-door S variant. Peruse more standard versions of the AMG GT two-door sports car, and you'll find that the closest variant to this four-door model in terms of output is the GTC, which uses a 557 horsepower version of that same V8, but that still costs around £133,000. Other Affalterbach coupe options at the kind of money you're looking at here would open up include the S63 version of the S-Class Coupe, which offers 612 horsepower and costs around £128,000. And the SL63 version of the SL Roadster, which offers 571 horsepower and costs around £119,000. But both of those are only rear-wheel driven in our market and aren't as dynamically sophisticated or as sharp as the car we're looking at here. You've got the idea, though. The bottom line is that Mercedes covers all aspects of the luxury coupe segment more thoroughly than any other brand, particularly in other markets where lesser six-cylinder 43 and 53 series versions of this GT four-door model are also being offered. At the time of this test, in the summer of 2019, no decision had been made on whether the 53 variant might make it here. A wider engine choice would certainly make this car a more urgent threat to its closest market rival, the Porsche Panamera. As it is, the V8 version of this GT four-door is only really comparable to variants at the very pinnacle of the Panamera range. A Panamera Turbo offers just enough power, 542 horsepower, to compete with the standard GT four-door 63 and costs around £120,000. For Porsche comparability with this GT four-door S model, you'd need a Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid, which offers 670 horsepower and costs around £140,000. The other obvious rival to what's on offer here is the BMW M8 Gran Coupe. That Munich model costs virtually the same as a standard GT four-door 63, around £122,000, but offers a power output 625 horsepower, closer to what you get in this uprated GT four-door 63S variant. But its 4.4-litre V8 puts out 150 newton-meters less torque, so an M8 won't feel quite as urgent in the mid-range, nor will that BMW or a Panamera seem quite as exclusive as this Merc. Not while sales in our market are limited to this 63 V8 variant anyway. So what other similarly powerful luxury performance four-door GT could you buy that would feel as exotic as this road-burning AMG contender? Well, how deep are your pockets? At the time of this test, Aston Martin was still selling its four-door performance GT, the Rapide, but only in top 595 horsepower AMR form, priced at £195,000. Not tempting. We're not really convinced that a Bentley Continental GT Coupe is much more of a credible option to this Mercedes either. The Conti seems to have the necessary firepower. The top W12 model offers 626 horsepower and costs around £160,000. But that Bentley's far heavier than this GT four-door and lacks a lot of the dynamic engineering that makes this Affalterbach model so agile. A Ferrari GTC4 would be better in that regard, but it costs around £200,000, has only got 2 passenger doors, and in Lusso T form puts out 37 horsepower less than the top version of this GT four-door. What else? Lamborghini Urus with 650 horsepower and a £160,000 price tag? Well, possibly, but that's an SUV. So those are your options. Now, if having considered them, we'd understand if you concluded that an AMG GT four-door was indeed the appropriate reward for your lifetime of endeavour. And if you're coming to that conclusion, then you'll want to know just how generous the brand has been with standard kit. Well, let's see. We should preface this by pointing out that a lot of what you're paying for here is bound up in intricate performance engineering. If all you want to do is go very quickly in a straight line, cosseted with every executive gadget under the sun, you'd be better off choosing the Mercedes-AMG S63 coupe model we mentioned earlier. But then you'd have to do without four-wheel drive, four-wheel steering, an electronically controlled rear axle differential lock, and the AMG Dynamics handling system that contributes so much to the agility of this car. If you're convinced by the GT four-door proposition, then in choosing this V8-powered 63 Series Mercedes-AMG Contender, your key decision, as we said at the beginning, lies in deciding whether this 639 horsepower S model is worth its £14,000 premium over the standard 585 horsepower version. Visually, the two variants are separated only by subtle differences. This S version gets silver chrome trimming for the front splitter and the rear diffuser, plus it features these more intricate multi-spoke 20-inch AMG alloy wheels with yellow brake calipers rather than the 5 twin-spoke 20-inch alloy rims fitted to the base variant. Both derivatives get the same AMG body styling package for the front and rear aprons and the side skirts, along with a bespoke AMG front grille and an electrically extending rear aerofoil. Plus, both V8 models use the same AMG Speed Shift 9-speed paddle shift auto gearbox, which incorporates a race start launch control function for Grand Prix style getaways. Other features you can take for granted on both V8 versions of this car include AMG Ride Control adaptive damping, a switchable AMG Performance exhaust system, multi-beam LED headlamps with an ultra-range high beam, keyless go, keyless entry and an active parking assist parking package, including all-round sensors and a 360-degree camera. Plus, there's an AMG Dynamic Select driving mode system with slippery, comfort, Sport Plus settings, plus an individual screen that allows you to tailor the various drive, transmission, dynamics, suspension and exhaust parameters to suit your preference. Inside on both V8 variants, you'll find a Napa leather-trimmed AMG Performance steering wheel, Napa leather upholstery, an upper dash section trimmed in stitched man-made Artico leather, stainless steel sports pedals and illuminated AMG door sills, as well as an alarm. Plus, luxury touches like a wireless phone charging mat, thematic 2-zone automatic climate control and heated powered front seats with lumbar support. The rear seats are heated too, but bear in mind that unless you pay extra, you have to have 2 separate non-reclinable rear chairs. We should cover connectivity and media features too. Now, as standard, all GT four-door variants get the latest Mercedes dual-bonded widescreen package, which combines a 12.3-inch instrument cluster display with a centre dash monitor of the same size. The instrument cluster features a couple of AMG-specific touches, a selectable single-dial Super Sports layout, or, if you stick with the more ordinary twin-dial Classic or Sport formats, an AMG Performance readout between the 2 main virtual gauges that briefs you on things like engine data, G-force readings and your AMG Dynamic Select drive mode settings. The centre dash monitor is your access point for the Command Online infotainment package, which here has been matched up with a media interface, a touchpad and an impressive 14-speaker, 10-channel, 640-watt Burmester surround sound system. As elsewhere in the Mercedes range, Command Online gives you hard disk drive 3D navigation, Linguatronic voice control, a 10GB music register, Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay or Android Auto smartphone mirroring. Our favourite inclusion here, though, is the AMG Track Pace feature. It's a lap timer, but it's also much more than that. When on track, the system can learn a new circuit and help you to analyse driving data and quickly improve your lap times. Plus, well-known tracks like the Nürburgring Nordschleife, Laguna Seca and Spa-Francorchamps are already stored in its memory. An incorporated drag race function allows you to analyse acceleration and braking values, and you can analyse telemetry data like tyre pressures, transmission temperatures and steering angles. If you'll ever be taking this car on track days, and you really should, you're going to absolutely adore all of this. It's quite simply the best track telemetry setup we've come across. In addition to all of this, as you'd expect, Command Online gives you all the luxury executive connectivity features we've recently become accustomed to in Mercedes top models. You get the usual connections to various Mercedes apps. There are, of course, ports for USB sticks and SD cards, and there's integrated Wi-Fi with links to Facebook, Google Maps, and weather updates. There's a year's subscription to the Mercedes Concierge service, which provides connection to an operator at the press of a button to deliver virtually any journeying information you might need to know. Plus, in addition, there's 3 years' use of the brand's live traffic service and its in-car office feature that gives you in-car access to your emails and your calendar. The Command package also incorporates another feature we really like, what Mercedes calls car-to-X communication. This is a mobile phone-supported exchange of information system that'll see your GT four-door sending data on driving conditions back to a central hub, which then shares it with other Mercedes drivers. That'll mean that in a way that's almost magical, your car will know in advance about things like icy conditions and traffic jams. It's very clever. Talking of cutting-edge information technology, like most premium brands, Mercedes has developed systems that allow you to monitor many aspects of your car from your smartphone. This GT four-door model does, of course, come as standard with the Mercedes-Me Connect Services package, which works via a free app. This reminds you when a service is due and can automatically detect and share with you details on your car's wear and tear items. In addition, the app gives you a one-touch button for fast breakdown recovery, an alarm feature that'll tell you when your parking meter's about to expire, and an emergency call system that automatically alerts the rescue services in the event of an accident. Buyers also get the extra package of remote online Mercedes-Me features that allow you to lock or unlock your car from wherever you are and locate your vehicle's position if you've forgotten where you parked it. If, rather unwisely, you lend your GT4 door out, a geofencing feature will alert you if it leaves a preset geographical boundary. And if your car's ever stolen, a vehicle tracker will show its location anywhere in the world. That's covered standard kit fitted to both V8 models. We've already touched on a few of the features that set this uprated 639 horsepower S version apart from the standard V8 model. Let's finish briefing you on that. Aside from the extra power, the quicker variant gives you more tools with which to use it in extremis, primarily through the additional AMG Dynamic Plus package. This gives you dynamic engine mounts, which enhance performance by reducing powertrain vibrations, and an extra AMG Dynamic Select driving mode setting, Race, which configures the handling for the track and includes a selectable drift mode for circuit use for those who can afford the necessary tyre wear and who feel confident about sliding the back out in a £150,000 luxury GT. Interior differences in the S model include DTM-style Dynamica microfiber inserts in the AMG Performance steering wheel and embossed branding in the AMG Sports seats. On to options. Now, there are a number of priorities you could have here, but if we were buying, the first thing we'd consider on this car is the kind of rear seat format we wanted. There are actually 3. You may remember that we mentioned earlier the standard 2-seat rear format, which can't be folded to extend the boot. Another £750 gets you the 3-seat rear bench we've got here, which does fold in a useful 40-20-40 split. Or if you're a chairman of the board type with nearly £4,000 more to spend, you could opt for the rear luxury lounge package, which gives the rear of this car the kind of ambience you'd get in an executive jet with 2 separate back seats separated by a centre console. This houses an infotainment screen, switches for a separate climate zone, temperature controlled cup holders and a wireless charging mat. Plus you get rear side airbags too. Continuing on the subject of seats, for the front chairs, you might be tempted to pay extra for the optional race-style AMG Performance bucket seats, but try before you buy because they're very firmly upholstered. Great for Monza, maybe not so good for the M4. Otherwise, when it comes to options, the first thing your dealer is going to be drawing your attention to is the extra cost Premium Plus equipment line package we've got here. For £3,600 more, this adds a head-up display, an air balance package including a fragrance generator with an oxygen ionizer, active massaging multi-contour front seats with cooled comfort ventilation, and a soft door close feature that automatically latches the door if it's not quite shut. There's also an energising comfort package which coordinates the climate control, fragrance dispenser, music and interior lighting with seat heating, cooling and massage into 5 expertly configured programs. It's a one-touch route to complete interior serenity. You might also be tempted to find the extra £1,500 necessary to get the optional panoramic glass sunroof. But what about if your priorities with this car lie more with track performance than cosseting luxury? If so, your dealer will direct you first to the fearsomely expensive AMG high-performance ceramic composite braking system, which for £7,000 more gives you a set of uprated anti-fade discs capped by unique bronze calipers. Then you'll also be pointed to the AMG aerodynamics package, which adds a huge fixed AMG rear wing, which at 187 miles an hour is supposed to add an extra 30 kilos of downforce. Autobahn users who habitually drive at 187 miles an hour will love it. The pack also includes a large front splitter, a matte black finished wheel arch fix and side skirt attachments. And if you specify it, you'll also be able to add the so-called AMG carbon fibre package 2, which trims the rear wing and the door mirrors in carbon fibre. Mention of that brings us on to all the ways you can pay extra to improve the aesthetics of your AMG four-door, both inside and out. Sticking with the carbon fibre theme, we'll tell you about the AMG Carbon Fibre Package 1, which uses that material to trim the front splitter, the side skirt inserts, the rear diffuser and various front wing inserts. Alternatively, an optional AMG exterior chrome package coats these elements in chrome. You might also want to look at a set of larger 21-inch wheel rims. You'll be offered a choice of either silver or black forged alloy cross-spoke designs. We also ought to mention that unless you want this car finished in polar white or Jupiter red, the only standard colours, you'll need to be paying your dealer more for your choice of paintwork. There are various metallic shades for just under £1,000 more, but you'll be paying more than twice that if you want a special designo shade like this particular car's selenite grey finish. What about the inside? Well, if, understandably, you don't really want the upper part of the dash trimmed in fake leather, you'll need one of the exclusive Nappa leather packs that deliver full Nappa hide everywhere for around £2,300 more. These packs offer the choice of a full black finish or black with highlights in red, brown or, as here, in grey. A classy Dynamica microfiber roof lining also comes as part of this pack, or you can pay even more for the exclusive Nappa style leather pack we've got here that offers the choice of brown and black, or as here, beige and grey upholstery. You may want to vary the interior trim inlays too. If you're prepared to pay extra, you've a choice of either AMG carbon fibre or matte carbon fibre, or if you prefer a more clubby look, there's open pore grey ash wood. Right, enough on equipment and options. Let's take a look at safety provisions, something we were critical about when we first tested the AMG GT two-door coupe. These days, AMG fits out its sports coupes rather better in this regard. Active brake assist autonomous braking is standard, and like most such systems, it scans the road ahead looking for potential collision hazards as you drive, and if one is detected, will automatically apply the brakes if you don't respond to warnings. There's also blind spot assist, which warns you if you're about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle. Active lane keeping assist will warn you if you drift out of lane on the highway and gently steer you back to where you ought to be. There's also attention assist, which monitors your reactions for drowsiness. Crosswind assist stabilises the car in side winds, and there's a pre-safe system that'll automatically close the windows and roof while pre-tensioning the seat belts to better prepare you for an impact if the car senses that an accident is inevitable. We'll keep going with standard safety stuff. The steer control steering assist helps you keep the wheel straight at cruising speeds. There's also an active bonnet to protect pedestrians, and the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a knee bag for the driver. As you'd expect, tyre pressure monitoring, 2 rear ISOFIX child seat attachments, and all the usual electronic aids for traction, braking and stability control are included too. Traffic sign recognition is built into the command infotainment system. An auto dipping function is built into the multi-beam LED headlamps, and, as mentioned earlier, an emergency assist feature is part of the Mercedes-Me Connect app, which will alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location if the airbags go off in an accident. If you want extra safety stuff, you'll need to pay Mercedes around £1,700 more for the optional driving assistance package, which also includes some of the brand's latest semi-autonomous driving technology. To experience this, you'll need to be on a dual carriageway and to have activated 2 of the driving assistance package elements: Active Distance Assist Distronic and Active Steering Assist. The Distronic feature is basically a super advanced adaptive cruise control that automatically regulates your distance to the car in front and can, if necessary, remotely slow the car with up to 50% of stopping power. Active Steering Assist keeps you in the centre of your designated lane and will, if needed, apply subtle steering correction to ease you back to where you should be. If you're trying the autonomous driving capability, you'll also want to experience another neat feature that's part of this optional pack: the clever Active Lane Change Assist system. On a dual carriageway with the Active Distance Assist Distronic cruise control and Active Steering Assist operating, the car will overtake by itself. Yes, really. Just hold the indicator stalk for a couple of seconds and it will pull out to pass a slower vehicle, then slot itself back into lane as soon as it's safe to do so. Another included Driving Assistance Plus package element is the Evasive Steering Assist feature that scans the road ahead for pedestrians and supports you in making sudden steering manoeuvres to avoid them. Pedestrians are also targeted by an upgraded Active Braking Assist system, additionally embellished to be able to also look out for unexpected tailbacks and crossing traffic. There's more in the Driving Assistance Plus package too. Active Blind Spot Assist not only warns you if you're about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle, but applies light steering torque to correct the manoeuvre. And route-based speed adaptation uses navigation data to automatically adapt your speed before curves, roundabouts, junctions and toll roads. The pack also includes a Pre-Safe Plus feature that helps specifically with vehicles running into the back of you, if necessary locking the brakes on standstill to prevent your car from being pushed into danger. It's all very reassuring. Given that this GT 4-door model is a massive 400 kilos heavier than its 2-door GT showroom stablemate, you'd expect that it would be considerably pricier to run. But if it had been, this car would have ended up way behind the fuel and CO2 figures of its most direct segment rivals. So an enormous amount of work's gone into this car's efficiency measures. Just how much becomes obvious when you learn that this GT63S model's WLTP combined cycle fuel return, up to 22.1 mpg, matches that of a much less powerful GT 2-door. And this 4-door design's NEDC CO2 showing, 257 grams per kilometre, in S form is considerably better. As you'd expect, the figures for the standard 585 horsepower version of this car are virtually the same, up to 22.6 mpg and 256 grams per kilometre. The most obvious rivals for both variants, BMW's M8 Gran Coupe and Porsche's Panamera Turbo, both do marginally better, but there isn't a great deal in it. and won't be unless you opt for the Porsche in its fastest Turbo SE hybrid plug-in form, which costs £4,000 more to buy and is also much heavier. So how have those Affalterbach engineers kept the running costs of this car within reasonable bounds? Well, there are certainly lots of little detailed touches that help. The active louvers in the front panel, for instance. When the car's working hard, these vents open to feed cool air to the radiators, but when you're driving normally, they close to aid aerodynamics and save fuel. Relatively efficient electromechanical steering also helps. Inevitably, though, the biggest contributor to efficiency lies in the clever design of the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 power plant, developed as part of Mercedes' Blue Direct engine family. The neat element here lies in the fact that the two turbos have been moved from their usual position on the outside of the cylinder banks and placed instead within the cylinder V. That means this engine can be smaller, slighter, more responsive and cleaner. For this installation, this engine also features ball bearings fitted to the compressor and turbine wheels. These there to reduce mechanical friction and therefore increase efficiency. It also features an AMG cylinder management cylinder deactivation system that, under light to medium throttle loads, automatically deactivates cylinders 2, 3, 5 and 8, which means that much of your commuting in this car will actually be done with a V4 rather than a V8 engine. A special icon in the instrument cluster indicates whether the deactivation system is in use. Of course, as a driver, you'll need to do your part here. The quoted figures assume that the AMG SpeedShift MCT transmission is operating in its most relaxed comfort mode that activates the engine stop-start system, gives you softer gear changes, and delivers a more restrained engine note. At cruising speeds in this setting, a gliding function will also be activated that temporarily decouples the engine from the drivetrain when you lift off the throttle. All of which is all very well, but let's get real here. In reality, if you're a typical owner, you won't be driving your AMG GT 4-door in a way that will deliver figures remotely close to the ones that Mercedes quotes. In our time with this car in mixed motoring, we found ourselves averaging about 15 to 20 miles per gallon, a more typical figure that would probably give you a range of around 350 miles from the 80-litre fuel tank. Take this car on track and you could expect to see consumption fall as low as 10 miles per gallon. In other words, however you slice it and dice it, a super fast luxury GT like this is always going to be a pricey thing to run. Nor is it only a question of accepting the fact that you'll quickly be on first-name terms with your local filling station's cashier. The CO2 figures we mentioned earlier mean that drivers will be faced with the highest possible company car benefit-in-kind rate of 37%. Road tax will also be steep at £2,070 for the first year, along with a £310 surcharge for the 4 years after that. Your insurance premiums will also be frightening, courtesy of a top-of-the-shop Group 50 rating for both 63 series models. Still, that'll be the same whatever choice you make in this segment, and at least this Mercedes will hold its value relatively well, which is refreshing because in the past, large V8 Mercedes-AMG models have tended to shed value at an alarming rate. Expect relative rarity to help here, though industry experts CAP aren't expecting class-leading residuals. It'll probably be a safer place for your money than an E63 though. Now then, what about other financial considerations? This AMG comes with a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty and Mercedes 3-year roadside assistance breakdown cover. Servicing will be needed annually or every 12,500 miles, which is more frequent than those rival BMW and Porsche models we mentioned. And garage visits won't be cheap, nor will consumer parts. But it's worth knowing that your maintenance outlay can be kept a little in check by going for the optional service care package. This spreads the cost of regular garage visits, guaranteeing the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services and covering the cost of all recommended service items such as brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. There's also an assist dashboard service indicator that monitors engine use and tells you exactly when a dealership visit is due. It's also worth mentioning that the inclusive Mercedes-Me Connect services package includes remote self-diagnostic capability, enabling your GT four-door to monitor wear and tear items and alert your local dealer to let you know if something needs seeing to. Remember that the bespoke Michelin tyres will be fearsomely expensive to replace, so bear that in mind before you go track day showboating. If AMG had merely added weight, size, power and complexity to its GT sports car to create this top four-door model, the results might have been impressive, but ultimately it would have been unsatisfying. The name of this car suggests that approach, but thankfully the sublime execution here is very different. For us, this is quite simply the most impressive piece of design that Affalterbach has brought us so far. Other manufacturers have tried before to blend four-wheel drive, four-wheel steering, torque vectoring and advanced chassis electronics into an engaging driving experience with limited success. This car does so in a way that makes you feel integrated into the process. And it also does so in a way that gives this huge luxury GT the agility, balance and body control of something much lighter and smaller. Even if you don't particularly like what this car is, once you get used to what it can do, you'll absolutely love what it does. Which is just as well, given the price proposition we're talking about in this case. Are you really getting twice as much car here as the Mercedes-AMG brand already offers from a very similarly sized and stylistically configured CLS 53 model that's almost as fast and costs half as much? It would be difficult to argue that. And if you really have to have a V8 and this much power, you could also contend that a BMW M8 Gran Coupe delivers it in a car of this kind for less, and that a Porsche Panamera Turbo SE e-hybrid provides it with additional plug-in capability. Yet, for all that, we find ourselves rather smitten with this GT four-door model. It may not have the lottery-winning looks of its two-door sports car showroom stablemate, but it'll be a darn sight easier to live with. Not only is it more accommodating, but it'll look after you better when you're pushing on or when conditions might be slippery. Yet it can still reward your inner F1 fantasies better than any other rival should you ever take it on track. It is quite simply an immense achievement and a remarkable piece of engineering.